What's going on, everybody? Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha, back with you. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Fun time of year, Alex. Disjointed time of year in the sports world. Like I'm watching a Missouri-Iowa college football game right now. It's 3 p.m. on a Monday. There's just always some sort of sport on. We made it through the NBA Christmas slate. We got a healthy 7-game NBA slate coming at us on this Monday. Pretty balanced schedule, really the rest of the week. Hope you had a great holiday. I enjoyed mine. Hope all the listeners had a great holiday as well. But we will dive right into our weekend recap, some of the happenings around the NBA. And you and I have not really talked about the D'Angelo Russell trade all that much yet, Alex. I know we briefly slacked about it a little bit. You may be in position to benefit from this in a couple leagues.
As someone who has been, well, I actually picked up Noah Clowney last week, just kind of off of a whim. It's like I needed a 16-team league. I needed a forward. He came back from injury. I'm like, let's see what happens here. I got a spot on my bench. You know, I can drop Precious Achiuwa and pick up Clowney.
Yeah.
So he should be in position for a bigger role, obviously. And then I had been holding on to D'Lo. You know, I think a lot of people dropped him in 12-team leagues, which was honestly pretty understandable. But in a 16-teamer, you know, I was just kind of like handcuffed to him. I'm like, he's just too good to drop. But now he's in a position to start for Brooklyn and play a lot more minutes.
This is ideal. This is ideal for D'Angelo Russell, right? I mean, it's ideal for both sides, really. I think the Lakers not having to give up a first-round pick in this deal, getting a player in Dorian Finney-Smith, who they've obviously coveted for a number of years, you know, kind of the ideal 3-and-D type of guy to pair with Reaves and LeBron and Anthony Davis. I think it's a win for both sides. I mean, Brooklyn, they won more games than I thought they would over the first month of the season. I think they've been one of the better coach teams this season, especially when you look at the remaining talent on this roster. But, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Schroeder trade and, you know, that perhaps being a harbinger of more trades to come. And we're already seeing that. Cam Thomas, you know, is now back healthy for the Nets. They did possibly lose Cam Johnson. He exited yesterday's game with a hip injury. No real word yet on whether or not he'll miss time. But D'Angelo Russell, man, this is a boon for his fantasy value. There's no question about that. Should have a good chance, I would think, to make his debut on Wednesday at Toronto. Brooklyn's off today and tomorrow. They do play a back-to-back at Toronto, at Milwaukee. You know, if for whatever reason he can't play in those games, maybe he could make his debut at home against Philly on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to start. I expect him to play 30 minutes. I expect him to basically just do what Dennis Schroeder was doing and possibly more. Especially, like you said, we don't know about Cam Johnson yet. And I think he's had hip injuries in the past, has he not?
He's had some lower body stuff. I don't know if it was hip or knee, but yeah, some to monitor. We haven't really received word yet.
Yeah, I mean, my only, you know, you mentioned yesterday, I was redoing the projections for D'Lo. My only real concern is like he has not been shooting well this season, and now his degree of difficulty on his shots is going to increase. So I feel like he might average, you know, he could average 16 a game with 6 assists, but it could also come on like 39% shooting. But I do expect him to average, you know, roughly 17 and 6. I think so, even with Cam Thomas back.
Well, I think that's fair. I think if you look at, I'm just sorting by minutes played this season, looking at his game logs. If you take his 10 highest minutes played games, he's averaged 16 points, 6.5 assists, 1 steal, 46% from the field, 2.5 threes per game at 40%. You know, obviously he hasn't played extremely well. There's a reason that the Lakers traded him, but he is still a guy that when the minutes have been there, you know, like when LeBron was out, when Austin Reaves was out, he was still giving you reasonable fill-in performances. I think, you know, as you mentioned, the reason that he was dropped in a lot of leagues, you know, part of it, of course, is the production, but the bigger part of it is he went through a stretch where he was playing, you know, 20, 17, 23, 16 minutes. Like, I don't care who it is. There's just not many players you can roster in a 12-team league when the minutes are that shaky. But I don't see that really being a problem in Brooklyn. I don't think he's like a winning enough player that it really changes the calculus for the Nets. Like they can continue to play him through the end of the season. Like he's not really a shutdown risk to me. There is the return to Brooklyn narrative. Like I think he'll be kind of weirdly embraced there. Yeah, I don't know if he'll get the full LeBron, you know, return to Cleveland treatment, but it'll be up there.
He has like a highlights to win ratio similar to Jordan Poole. You know, it's sort of like that caliber, maybe even LaMelo Ball. You know, like I always feel like LaMelo Ball is like some version of D'Angelo Russell that he just couldn't quite unlock.
Yeah.
D'Angelo's got kind of that weird sort of skip shot as well, and he's just kind of doing his own thing out there. But yeah, I mean, you have to pick him up if he's available in your fantasy league. That is for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's a shutdown risk at the end of the year, but I'm sure he would also love the opportunity to audition his services for some other team that wants to take a shot on D'Angelo Russell sometime in the future.
I think I tweeted like 7 years ago that watching D'Angelo Russell play is like watching someone play pickup with like their AirPods in, just like listening to music. He's just kind of shooting around out there. Yeah, he's everything he's doing is independent of what's going on in the rest of the game. So from the net side of things, obviously we like this for D'Lo. I mean, who takes a hit here? Like, is it a slight hit for Cam Johnson? Is it a slight hit for Cam Thomas? Obviously Ben Simmons is somebody that we talked about working his way back into the mix. That there has to be some sort of impact there too.
It is a little hard to determine because Schroeder, Cam Thomas, and Cam Johnson have not all been healthy at the same time for a while. It was kind of the case at the beginning of the season. And then back then, Simmons wasn't even really playing as much as he is now. So I still think that there's this team has no scorers besides D'Lo, Cam Thomas, and Cam Johnson. I think there is enough for most of those guys to, get their own. Ben Simmons might actually be the biggest, loss here relative to the fact that he was kind of fringe before and then worked his way onto fantasy rosters lately and then is back off. It is tough to say who exactly is a negative.
Yeah, to your point, Brooklyn over the last 10 games, second to last in the NBA in points per game, just barely over 102 per game, ahead of only Orlando, which continues to play fairly well and just loves occupying that spot at the bottom of the scoring category. You mentioned Noah Clowney. Certainly he'll benefit with no Dorian Finney-Smith. I would expect him to be essentially the full-time starter going forward. I think the only real concern with that is like if they were to trade Cam Johnson, it's possible that you could bring back some competition for minutes, but you're also in that scenario sending out a 30 to 35 minute per game guy. So I think Noah Clowney should be set for a, kind of bad team, good stats type of run the rest of the season. High volume 3-point shooter. I think it's going to be pretty hit or miss. There have been nights where the minutes have been there and the numbers just kind of don't really match up. But I think in category leagues that 3-point shooting should be pretty sticky. On the Lakers side of things, I mean, you're bringing in ultimately a low usage, role player in Dorian Finney-Smith. So I don't see this as like a significant hit to Rui Hachimura. He's probably the obvious guy who takes a slight step back. I'm not the biggest Rui guy, as you know. I don't think it's really going to affect LeBron or Anthony Davis. They certainly feel comfortable with what they've gotten from Austin Reaves as a playmaker. I think that made them a lot more comfortable making this decision to let D'Angelo Russell go. But anything, really actionable on the Lakers side?
I think you said it with I think Reaves is going to do more on offense. I think LeBron's going to do a little bit more on offense, especially as a point guard, I am curious to see how the minutes shake out because you lose a guy who's playing about 25. In theory, you can just slot Dorian Finney-Smith into those 25 minutes and then just find 5 minutes somewhere else to rip from a guy here or there. And then all of a sudden, Dorian Finney-Smith is playing 30 minutes a game as a wing player, whether or not he's starting. I think this makes Hachimura's minutes more inconsistent, because there are probably going to be some times where the Lakers need defense and then they can put Finney-Smith in. There's going to be some times where they need scoring and they could put Hachimura in. But Max Christie's been really good. I could see Connect or Reddish, because it's Reddish is really out there just for defense. And you bring Dorian Finney-Smith in to be a defender. So if he's also as good of a defender or close to as good of a defender as Reddish, and a way better offensive player, especially when it comes to, spotting up from three, which is what they need. I do wonder maybe if Reddish is just the guy who takes really the bump or the decrease in minutes.
Yeah. And, for fantasy purposes, not a whole lot to do there. Hopefully you're not, pinning your season's hopes on one Cam Reddish, which is still crazy to me that we talk about him as this defensive guy. That was not the sell coming out of high school, coming out of college. It was this guy might be Tracy McGrady. And it turns out he's just hanging on.
When I was watching I think it was, I don't remember if it was the Christmas Day game, but I was at my parents' place and I was watching a Lakers game and they were I forget who, one of the analysts on national TV was like, Reddish, the team really believes in him. He's got, it's like they've been saying this about Reddish for 5 years. Every single year, it's like he has a chance. It's just he's gonna do it. He's gonna go over the hump. It's like every single season they keep saying that about him.
The best asset you can have as like a fringe NBA player is being a top 5 recruit in your class. Like that carries so much weight. You see this in the NFL too. It's like these certain guys that you're like, oh man, I remember studying him in high school. It's like it could still be in there. It could still be unlocked.
And all of the players from his class love it. They're all like, Reddish is so talented. Like everybody's always talking Cam Reddish up. So it's like he still has the aura around him,
I think it was Anthony Edwards didn't he call him like the toughest player to guard or something like that?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
All right, we got a few other big news items to hit. Let's talk about the Sacramento Kings first and foremost. We had a coach firing. Mike Brown unceremoniously let go over the last week. Doug Christie has now stepped in as the head coach for the Kings. They've lost 6 in a row. They are now occupying the 12th spot in the Western Conference. Still only 3 games out of the 10. Which is currently held by the Spurs. The Suns have been in a bit of free fall, so they're now at the 11. So the Kings aren't completely out of this. It's a strange spot. Obviously Mike Brown had kind of led this team out of the wilderness, led them to a postseason berth. Everything had been, I thought, pretty positive around Mike Brown until about 2 weeks ago. This feels like it fell apart really quickly for Sacramento.
It does. I think they have the issue is like last year. I think the stats say they overperformed last year in terms of their record.
Yeah.
And I actually looked this up. So they fired Mike Brown. They actually had a better net rating this year than they did last year. Like their net rating is actually better this year. And They fired Mike Brown. So it's just the records don't look as good. And with that story that came out about De'Aaron Fox and Rich Paul kind of pressuring the organization, I think my assumption is that he just lost the locker room or lost De'Aaron Fox for whatever reason. And that's probably the biggest reason why he got let go.
I know it's tough to pinpoint, the exact issue with this team. And I will point out, they were extremely healthy last season. I think that was a big part of it. They've been pretty healthy this year as well. That's just part of the roster composition. Monk missed some time, but that's really about it. Last week in this space, we were getting a lot of questions about DeMar DeRozan. He was coming off of that 2-point game in the loss to Indy. He's been a little bit better of late, certainly rebounded on Saturday against the Lakers. That was another loss, of course, for the Kings, but 25, 7, and 6 for him. I don't really know with this current roster how they crawl out of this. Like, could they get to the 9 or the 10? Yes. I think that's pretty doable. They should be able to leapfrog San Antonio, but I also think Phoenix could play better going forward once they get healthy. So it's like, I don't know exactly where they fit. It feels like they're kind of back to being in that middle zone. Do you think we get a De'Aaron Fox trade? Is there another move that would really make sense for this team?
I don't think so. I just, who else are you trading? Like Keegan Murray or Malik Monk?
You could trade. I just don't think you're getting a difference maker for those guys.
No, and it would be brutal to trade Sabonis. It kind of changes your whole identity. You trade Sabonis for like a traditional big, so your defense is better, but then it's like you're trading Sabonis because you brought in DeRozan and he's not like a great defender, and you're sort of destroying that. And also who is trading for Domantas Sabonis? Maybe like Orlando. But I don't know how they dig out of this. The problem is like they have all these offensive, like their offense is pretty good because they do have, especially in their starting lineup now, a good amount of like offensive talent, guys who can handle the ball, make their own plays, create for others. But that comes at the sacrifice of defense. Like the trade-off hasn't been worth it.
Got some good questions stacking up in the chat here. We will, of course, hit those as the show rolls along. Just want to get through a couple other news items from the weekend. Had a few days to digest this one, Alex. But Luka Doncic, of course, goes down in the first half of that Mavs loss on Christmas Day. I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but from a fantasy perspective, close to worst case scenario. Out at least a month. So we're looking at late January at the earliest for Luka to come back. And as you know, Alex, that is close enough to the All-Star break that it makes you wonder, if Luka is still dealing with this in, late January, early February, is this something that you shut him down, you bring him back after the break? Dallas has a bunch of other injuries. They play tonight. Kyrie Irving has already been ruled out. They're playing the Sacramento Kings. So a decent chance, you would think, for Sacramento to potentially get on track. No Luka, no Kyrie. It feels relatively straightforward. When Luka's out, we've already seen Kyrie, had a huge game the other night, 46 with no Doncic. I mean, there's no real replacing Luka. You have a kind of an ideal high usage number 2 in Kyrie to pick some of that up. We're going to see a lot more Spencer Dinwiddie. I'll tell you that.
A lot more Spencer Dinwiddie. Obviously, pick him up in fantasy if you haven't already. Same with Quentin Grimes, who seemed to play a little bit better with Doncic out. We might see some more Hardy, but it feels like he's more missed than hit at this point. And then Clay has the opportunity to step up a little bit. But like you said, I mean, it's just the burden's gonna fall on mostly Kyrie, then Dinwiddie, and then everybody else is gonna pick up a little bit more. But this team has proven to be like they can tread water without Luka. I mean, they're 20-12 right now. I think there's a decent chance they go 500 or slightly below 500 during this stretch if they stay healthy. Besides Doncic being out, so yeah, he could get held out for. It would not shock me if he was out past the break.
Does this worry you at all from a Klay Thompson perspective? As far as Luka, kind of being the engine that sets up Klay Thompson. We saw Klay take 17 shots that tied a season high against Portland on Saturday, but went just 5 of 17, 2 of 8 from beyond the arc. It's like, in theory, you'd like to be able to backfill with Klay Thompson. At this point in his career, I don't know that you can just say like, hey, we're going to need like 22 a night from you for the next month.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get as many good looks, like just free wide open looks. But at some point you might need, your offense is just not going to run the same way. It's not going to, you only have one player with real gravity now. So I could see Kidd running some more actions, like specifically to get Klay open and have him fire off some threes. So his volume might go up, but I don't know if his efficiency might suffer.
Looking at our on-off stats page, which you could find over at rotowire.com, Jaden Hardy is the guy who gets the biggest usage bump without Luka Doncic. And, again, there's certainly some noise in that sample, and, we'll see how much he ends up playing. I think he only played low 20s on Saturday and what was a competitive game against Portland. So that's kind of wait and see for me. As you'd expect, Kyrie gets about an 8% usage bump. Spencer Dinwiddie gets about an 8% usage bump. Klay Thompson does not really get a bump. If anything, we've seen kind of a worse version of Klay Thompson. You and I talked about this on NBA XM last week. Per 36 minutes, he takes 2.3 fewer 3-point attempts, again, per 36 with Luka off the court. 4.5 fewer points per 36 with no Luka, and almost a no change in terms of the usage rate. So somewhat of a small sample, still, early enough in the season. There haven't been that many minutes, where Luka's just completely not out there with Klay on the court, but a little bit of a concerning early trend.
Yeah, I think maybe depending on your fantasy league, you might actually be able to leverage this into like a fake sell high. Like if you have Klay and someone thinks like, oh, Klay is going to pop off, no Doncic, you might be able to actually send Klay and get something back. I would think about that.
All right, one last thing I want to get to, and then we'll take a quick break and hit some questions from the chat. Donte DiVincenzo starting to potentially, possibly, maybe heat up. He's had his two best games of the season have come in the last 2 days. They had a win over Houston and then another narrow win over the San Antonio Spurs yesterday. 26, 7-4 for Donte in that win over San Antonio. 5 of 10 from beyond the arc, 6 of 10 from 3 in the win over Houston. If we bring this back now to his last 5 games, so we're dating back to December 19th, he's given you 17 points, 4.5 boards, 3.2 assists, 3.7 made 3-pointers. Are you buying in on this at all?
I'm buying in a little bit. I watched that Houston game. He was crucial to that comeback. I mean, Houston just folded in that fourth quarter. I couldn't even believe what I was watching. Which is funny. The analyst for Houston is like, this Rockets team, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. This is at the start of the fourth quarter, and they just completely collapse like a house of cards immediately after. That guy knows. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in partially because, like, to me, the reality is they just need him. Like, they need him to be good because they are 3 games over 500, and they just need something. And you didn't bring DiVincenzo in to play him 20 or 25 minutes. So the fact that he played great the past 2 games and got the minutes, I think it's a good opportunity to try to buy back in on him.
I'm glad you brought up that comeback, by the way. I was not watching that one live, but my goodness, the Rockets were up 15 with 4 minutes left.
Yeah, so Şengün was cooking Gobert all night. It was like a personal mission to embarrass Rudy Gobert. And then they pulled Gobert. And then I think, Şengün still felt like, well, now I can cook even more because and they just, Şengün had a few bad possessions. They couldn't get anything going. The Wolves brought out their smaller, fast defensive lineup, and it just a lot of clunkers for Houston and some really bad offense.
All right, we'll be right back in a moment, but we have a word from our friends over at DraftKings Pick 6. Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks, compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick 6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right, let's take it over to the chat where you guys have been giving us great questions throughout the season. Always appreciate all of those. We'll hit as many as we can throughout the episode. We will start out with a question from Intrepid Cephalopod. He says, I traded SGA for KAT and Fred VanVleet in an 8-cat league. Guard heavy build. He has Trey, Harden, Garland, Poole, Norm Powell. So he needs rebounds and he's punting field goal percentage. So again, traded SGA for KAT and VanVleet. The question is, was this a crafty move or should the nice men in white coats fit me for a straitjacket? Well said.
Intrepid Cephalopod sounds like one of those generic names you get if you like sign up for an Xbox account, but you don't change the username at all. It's just like
a wireless password.
Yeah, it's just like adjective, noun, just completely random. I think that's fine. I mean, if your build is that guard heavy, I don't actually mind trading SGA for KAT and Fred VanVleet because VanVleet's not having a great season, but he's still a 12 team. You just roster him and you can start him type of player, and you might actually be able to flip for Fred VanVleet for another big if you need to. So, like again, at sort of neutral in a vacuum, you may technically lose this trade, but like you also need to do it make sense for your roster, and I think you did.
I think the big thing here is that the gap between SGA and KAT is not nearly as cavernous as we thought it would be. Like SGA has been a better fantasy player by a meaningful amount, but in terms of per game 8-cat value, Karl-Anthony Towns is the 5th best player in the NBA so far this season. So that there hasn't been this massive gap. Like if you drafted Towns, you're thinking what, like if he's 20 to 25th, you would live with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone about as well as it could so far, considering the change in scenery, considering the pieces around him.
KAT's been amazing. I don't really see a reason for it to slow down. He's just going to keep getting the minutes. They rely on him a ton on offense.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
All right. Paul says, should I trade McCollum, Grady Dick, and Daniel Gafford for Amen Thompson and Austin Reaves? 12-team, 9-cat.
I don't mind that. Grady Dick and Daniel Gafford are pretty inconsistent. Yep. They need some injuries. McCollum, New Orleans season's down the drain. Is even really going to be playing in March and April. And, Amen's minutes still kind of are up and down. He might get a suspension. I don't know if that's been announced yet. He had that fight with Tyler Hero last night. I was
I think
watching
he's
that
getting a
live.
suspension.
Yeah, it was awesome. And the Houston crowd loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fine trade.
Yeah, I'm also really high on Austin Reaves rest of season. I know we touched on this in the open when we were talking about the D'Lo trade, but I mean Reaves has been fantastic on balance this year, and started to play more minutes lately. Like he's been a 30+ minute guy all year, but we're talking like 37, 38 minutes routinely over these last couple of weeks, and I don't think that changes now with Russell out of the picture. We'll see if they make another guard addition. But I mean Austin Reaves just had 16 assists the other night against Sacramento, right? I mean, that's just not really the type of player that he's been as far as that kind of assist upside, and had a triple double on Christmas Day against Golden State. Obviously had the game winner in that game as well. So I think in order for, to swing a 3-for-1 like this, or 3-for-2 like this, I should say, where you have a somewhat inconsistent piece in Amen Thompson, you're hoping for the defensive upside. The other categories are going to be a little more hit or miss. I think you might be getting the best player in this deal. Like McCollum is still putting up solid numbers, even though the Pelicans just get hammered by 15 every single night. Like he's still putting up good numbers. But if I could choose any of these five, like who do I want the rest of the season? I think it would probably be Reaves. All right. Victor says Desmond Bane or Pascal Siakam in a 9-cat league.
I think Bane probably has more upside just because he hasn't been. He's starting to pick back up.
Yep.
And I think Siakam just is who he is at this point. His numbers are just like, they're almost set in stone, like every single night. It's just the same stuff. And I think Siakam's actually a little bit underrated in fantasy, but to me, it depends what you need category wise.
Yeah, I think they're two pretty comparable players. Like Siakam is the 57th best fantasy player this year. That feels exactly right. Like he's just the embodiment of the 57th best player in the league right now. And, Bane ranks slightly behind him, but he also went through like a 2 or 3 week stretch where he was just outright bad. And I think on balance, he's shown us that that'll probably be the low point. I would prefer Bane here. I think he's also in a better offense. I mean, Memphis is like one of the top 3 offenses in the NBA right now. They're playing at a significantly faster pace than anybody. I mean, they're way ahead of Indiana, who, was up near the top of the league last year. I'm just looking at the last 10 games. I mean, Memphis's pace is pushing like 109. And the Pacers are hanging around league average.
I feel like Memphis. Do you feel like Memphis might be the most underrated team in the NBA?
Most underrated?
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, they've become like one of my 3 most favorite teams to watch. I mean, they're 22-11. Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, I think there's been a lot more talk about Houston and Dallas, who are kind of in that same group near the top of the West. And obviously OKC is kind of on their own level. But no, I think that's fair. Yeah. I think that's super fair.
I think because, like, to me, Memphis and Orlando are kind of on the same page where it's like it doesn't matter who's hurt. Like, their coaches just get the best out of them all the time. And now that Memphis has been a little bit healthier, they've just very quietly snuck up to, like, the number 2 seed in the West.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like Orlando gets more talk because their defense is so extremely good and they're missing Paolo and Franz. So people are like, oh, they're this good. And then I feel like Memphis doesn't quite get as mentioned, especially because they are playing in the Western Conference as well.
And they've had a ton of injuries, right? I mean, Ja's been in and out. Bane's been in and out. I mean, every now and then we'll get our Santi Aldama moments. Like they're extremely deep with guys who you would not expect to step in and play as well as they have. So yeah, I think that's fair. 22-11 are the Grizzlies over the last 10, third in the NBA in net rating, behind only Cleveland and OKC. All right, we got another one from the Cephalopod. He says Powell or Hunter rest of season in 8-cat. This is the how afraid of Kawhi should Norm owners be question, says the Cephalopod.
I think I would actually rather have DeAndre Hunter.
What a wild statement.
I know. The thing is, I've been like a Hunter. I was kind of a Hunter guy, like in his 2nd or 3rd year, and then the injuries, and then Trey took over, and it's just now it's happening, of course. I would be a little worried, but I also it's just not. Powell is still shooting 47% from 3. It's just not. He's a great 3-point shooter. I just don't think that's a real thing. And Hunter, you can also say, oh, Hunter's been, ridiculously efficient as well. On the season, he's 50% from the field and 45% from 3. Maybe that trends down, but Hunter has also cut a lot of the bad shots out of his shot diet, which has been big. But I I'd maybe rather have Hunter. It's pretty close though. I wouldn't like lose sleep over this.
Right. It's wild how close this is, especially with how Powell started the year. I almost would remove the Kawhi thing from this entirely. Like, I don't trust that Kawhi is going to play enough games that it dramatically impacts Norm Powell. And like, what are the minutes going to look like? Like, how healthy does he have to stay before he's consistently playing 34 to 37 minutes a night? Like, do we even get to that point this year? I would almost kind of try to remove that and just say, which player would you rather have? And I know Powell's been better on balance fantasy wise than Hunter this year, but if you do, say there's like a 15% concern about Kawhi, maybe that breaks the tie for you. I mean, Hunter's been unreal, man. This was one of the more unlikely like year 7 breakouts of all time. last 15 games, he's given you 23 points, 4 rebounds, 53% from the field, over 3 3-pointers per game. I will say the knock on him is it really is points and threes and percentages. It's not like Powell gives you great rebounding or assist numbers, but he gives you better overall counting stats than Hunter does. So, maybe your category needs factor into that a little bit, but Hunter's also taking 6 free throws a game and hitting him at 88%.
That's huge. That was a part of his game that he really made a stride as a sophomore in the NBA, and then kind of just fell apart. But he's been really aggressive offensively, and it's helped Atlanta a lot.
Great question here from Alexi. Says, who wins, Gobert for D'Lo?
Well, you have Gobert, don't you? In
Yep.
Stake League, I'm gonna pass this off to you because you're the one who has to look at the Gobert box score every night.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I mean, the way my team is constructed, Gobert would be more valuable to me. Not that it matters. I've just put together such a crap team in that league that I don't think either of them are saving my season. But if we're talking category league, it certainly depends. How much do you value field goal percentage, rebounds, blocks? Not that you're getting all that many from Gobert this season. I think he's hovering around like 1.4. If you're looking for the upside play, if you're in the middle of your league, if your season could kind of go either way, if you have a balanced team, maybe you just chance it on D'Angelo Russell, because I don't think what we're seeing from Gobert is going to dramatically change. Like the other night, yesterday against San Antonio, 17 points, 15 boards, 2 blocks. Ideal, right? That's what you want. Game before that, 7 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks. 2 games before that, 2 points, 6 rebounds, 1 block. Like the down performances for Gobert have just been way too frequent. Like you still see the ceiling plays, but he alternates good game, bad game every single night. And I think with Russell, there's actually going to be more consistency there now in Brooklyn.
I agree with you. And generally speaking, well, it depends. It depends on your league, but assists are the toughest thing to find off the waiver wire. So you could make the assist play with D'Lo and then stream in rebounds and blocks, guys on 4-game weeks and stuff too, depending on
just wait for the Mark Williams injury and pick up Nick Richards, and you'll be just fine. He'll give you peak Gobert production. All right. Is it worth holding Quentin Grimes and or Spencer Dinwiddie in a 14-team 9-cat league?
Yeah, you gotta at least wait a week and see how this plays out, just from like a usage and minutes perspective.
All right, our guy Ant says, hey fellas, what's up, Ant? Harden has been hurting my team lately with field goal percentage and turnovers. Will he pick back up or continue to decline? Category league. Basically, should he consider trading James Harden?
I don't anticipate Harden getting any better or worse really than he is right now. Like, I think we've had a big enough of a sample. He's old enough, the team environment. I think this is about what he's going to average all year. So if for you that's killing your team, I think you could try to move off of him. But he's never, I mean, he's just not, he's field goal percentage and turnovers. You're always going to take a hit by having Harden on your team.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that the field goal percentage has been a little bit better. If you divide, the first almost third of the season now into 2 parts, like he was shooting like 37% over the first half of that. He's closer to like 41, 42% now. It's still not good. I don't necessarily see him completely dragging himself out of this. Like he's even peak Harden was like 44, 45% from the field. And we're now talking about a 35-year-old who's like kind of the only real playmaking option on his team. The turnovers have been a huge issue, right? I mean, I feel like I mostly play in 8-cat leagues, so I don't really think about that as much as I should. But he's almost like doubled his turnovers from last year. He was at 2.6 per game last season, which is great for James Harden. Back to 4.7 now. And again, that's closer to where he was during his peak Houston years, but he's no longer shooting 45% from the field and giving you, 36 and 8 every single night to offset that. So yeah, I think I'll agree with you on this one and say what you're getting right now is probably what you'll get the rest of the way, which is still fine. Still a very productive player. But if that's harming your build, then I think you should explore a trade. All right. What do you think about adding Scoot Henderson in a 14-team 9-cat league? He's been balling out, but it's been with guys out and Billups not with the team.
I think, sure, add him. In a 14-team league, I mean, go ahead and add. You can add any player that's kind of playing well. I think, which is kind of where we're at with Scoot Henderson. It's just I sort of view him as just like kind of any other guy. Like I don't really know what to do more than that at this point. But yeah, he's had 4 good games in a row for what it's worth, averaging 16 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, good shooting. I will say the 16 points, he's shooting 47% from 3, making 2.3 threes a game. That's not a real thing. I mean, he's a 32% shooter on the year, was a 32% shooter last year. But I think you'd be fine to speculative add him. I don't know what their schedule looks like. I'll try to pull that up quick. But if it's a 4-game week, which it is not, I think it's fine.
I think if you want to ride the hot hand here, if it's your last roster spot in a 14-team league, you're not going to get laughed out of the room for adding Scoot Henderson after 4 good games. But everything Alex said makes sense here. I mean, if you look at the previous 20 games before this 4-game stretch, he was shooting 27.3% from 3. So he's raised his season-long 3-point percentage like 5 points just in the last week. So once Billups comes back, maybe he's back in the doghouse. I don't know. We've kind of went through this with Scoot last year too, where everybody's out on him, and then it's like, oh, I don't know. He looked okay for a few games. I think if you do add him, just don't necessarily think you're locking in somebody who's going to be on your roster 3 weeks from now. If you want to do the week or 2 stream, that's fine, but he's not going to keep shooting 47%. Should I sell high on Mark Williams now or hold 14-team points league?
Yeah, the years of injury have been a little bit of a concern. Would I sell high or hold? Well, you might be able to wait and sell higher. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I was gonna say. I mean, if we're just saying he's stayed like kind of healthy for 3 weeks, does that count as high?
I would explore trading him because I think his peak is probably what, like the 75 to 90 range, I would say is probably best case for Mark Williams. So if you can trade him and get like a top 90, aim for top 75 first back, I would just do it.
Yeah, I think what you have to keep in mind with Mark Williams is there's a pretty low scoring ceiling. We're looking at 10 to 14 points most nights, 8 or 9 rebounds. He's never been a super high volume shot blocker. Even when he stayed healthy, he kind of maxes out at like just over 1 block per game. So I think you want to be realistic. If somebody's willing to give you a more consistent, healthier player, a top 100 guy for Mark Williams, I would think about doing that. Going back to what you said earlier, as far as being able to find those replicable stats on the waiver wire, maybe not so much in a 14-team league, but you could find 80% of it, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, I will say about Mark Williams, like he is actually on pace to have his best season. Like per 36, he's averaging 24 points. The 4.5 assists is kind of interesting. I just don't know how much like all that sticks. The assist could drive his fantasy value, but you're talking about points league rather than a category league, so the equation's a little bit different.
I mean, to be fair, we're also talking per 36 for a guy who's maxed out at 26 minutes so far this year. And again, I know part of it's because of the injury; they're bringing him along slowly, but he's played in 9 of the last 11 games, and he's played more than 20 minutes twice in that span. Those were the last 2 games. So even when he's at quote unquote full strength, I don't know that he's ever going to be a 34-minute per game guy. As you could tell, I'm probably a little bit lower than consensus on Mark Williams. Good question here from Kool-Aid Trippin. Should we start getting concerned for Tari Eason? Are we still holding?
Yeah, I mean, I think Well, you need like 25 minutes for Tari Eason, I think. Like you can get by if he's playing like 18 to 22 on like a 4-game week. You can throw him into the lineup. But he's also had like his injury history is it's kind of a thing now.
Yeah.
If you need to win now, like if you're near the bottom of your standings, you probably just have to drop him to get somebody in your lineup that is like going to play. And the reality is Eason is still behind other guys. Like Eason is functionally behind Jabari Smith. He's functionally probably behind Amen Thompson and Dylan Brooks and to some extent Şengün. So I think he's a luxury hold, I would say at this point.
All right, we'll hit a few more here on our way out. Do I trade Jarrett Allen for Mikal Bridges? Good question.
I think that's okay. In a category league, I would only do it for categorical reasons.
Yeah.
These guys are close enough, I would say, in like general value to where if you need what Bridges is bringing you, and his shooting has been a lot better lately. So he's just giving you efficient scoring and not like a ton else that really matters. Then I would do it. But if you need the rebounds, obviously, and blocks, go with Allen.
I traded Chris Paul and Rudy Gobert for Tyrese Haliburton. What do y'all think?
2 thumbs up. That's a good deal.
That's a very good deal. That's a very good deal.
Yeah.
That's a deal that I would love to be able to make.
In a deep, like it's in the shallower the league, the better you did. But yeah, I mean, Chris Paul's having a good year. Gobert, we talked about him earlier, but at the end of the day, both those guys are like not fringe, but they're, Haliburton, when he's right, and he has been better lately, is like he's a first round value. So it's a good trade.
Even if you get a diminished version of Haliburton, you're getting the best player in the deal by a lot. Like at worst, you're getting like the 30th best fantasy player, and you're giving up, Gobert, who's like in the 80s right now, and Chris Paul, who again has played well, but is ultimately like 39-year-old Chris Paul. So I think this is a deal that you definitely had to make. So good call doing that. Zion is on my waiver wire. Should I claim him?
Yeah. Probably.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I would. If you have an IR spot, obviously just pick him up and toss him in there. Even if you don't, it's probably worth dropping your worst player for, depending on who that is.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're in like an 8-team, 10-team league, maybe you wouldn't have like a comfortable drop. But yeah, if 12 or larger, there's somebody that you're not starting unless it's an emergency. And it's worth chasing the upside here in this situation. Like, would I trade for Zion? No, but if I can pick him up for free and just stash him, I might as well. All right, good kind of philosophical question here. What is your approach for building category league teams? Do you try to have a balanced, competitive team in all categories, or focus your team additions on boosting categories you're already strong in?
For roto leagues, I go balanced. And for head-to-head leagues, I prefer like in extremes, punt. If you're in a 9-cat, I'd prefer to punt 4 categories. But I would just, look at it week by week, see why you're getting beat. Are you getting beat in a couple categories? You're getting beat in every category. If you're getting beat in every category, it's a problem. If there's a couple that you can shore up and maybe do better, that is what it is. So there's sort of more specific strategy in head-to-head category leagues that you need to really lock in on why you're winning or losing. But that's broadly how I approach it.
All right, rest of season values on Trey Murphy, Isaiah Hartenstein, Chris Middleton, Devin Vassell, Mark Williams, D'Angelo Russell, DeAndre Ayton, Josh Giddey, and Cam Thomas in a 7-team ESPN points league. I don't know if we'll hit all these names, but generally the question is, are any of these sell highs or should they all be held? 7-team league.
Trey Murphy's not a sell high. Neither is Hartenstein. I don't think Hartenstein could get a little bit worse when Holmgren comes back. That'd be like a soft sell high. No, Middleton, you got to hang on to. He's kind of just getting started. Vassell, I think, is only going to get better. We talked about Mark Williams. I would hang on to D'Lo now after the trade. I would probably try to trade DeAndre Ayton, to be honest with you, just because I don't know what's going to happen in Portland in March and April. Josh Giddey, probably hang on to him because if Levine or Vucevic get traded, then
Yep.
he's only going to be better. So he's definitely not going to sell high. And Cam Thomas, I don't think I'd sell high on him either.
I think Mark Williams, if you're truly in a 7-team league, I think you could probably do better than Mark Williams. So that would be the guy I would pinpoint to potentially look to upgrade or try to find a little bit higher upside. All right, we'll do 2 more and then we'll get out of here. Dyson Daniels or Fred VanVleet rest of season. I'm debating trading Dyson now, possibly the highest value he ever had, and Fred VanVleet starting to pick it back up again.
Interesting. You don't have a category league in here, whether or not it's points or categories. Obviously, like Daniels in a category league, I mean, he's 32nd ranked player in 8 cat right now. I would not give that up for Fred VanVleet, because that's like VanVleet's ceiling, and Daniels is doing it like right now, And I don't think it's coming down for. I should clarify. I don't think it's coming down for Daniels. He's leading the NBA in deflections. It's not like fake steals. It's legit.
He had 6 and 8 steal games back to back last week. It's outrageous. He's up to 3.1 steals per game. I mean, that is a just ridiculous advantage in that category. So I think you laid it out well. This is a category league. I don't think I would make that deal. And I know VanVleet has played a little bit better lately, but we're still talking about a guy who's going to struggle to shoot 42% from the field. His like good games now are like 16 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. I don't think that ceiling is really where it used to be. So if you're in a category league, ride this thing out as long as you can with Dyson Daniels. All right. Let's do this one, because I want to talk about Trayce Jackson-Davis. Do I pick up Trayce Jackson-Davis or Andrew Nembhard?
Man, this Warriors rotation. He got DNP'd, Trayce Jackson-Davis, and then just like started playing again. I don't know. It must have been a message. Past 5 games for TJD, 5 starts, 14-9 with 2.6 steals, 1.8 blocks. Almost exactly what we were like projecting him to do. Mm-hmm. That puts him in like interesting territory, but not like a must roster player. And then Nembhard just got a really low ceiling. That's sort of my concern about him. But I will say, like, the Pacers seem a lot more. Yeah, Haliburton's playing better, but they seem more willing to play through other guys. Yeah. And Nembhard has just been good. 17-5 over his past 6. Some of that's hot shooting. It's going to go down, but I think in a vacuum, Jackson-Davis is higher upside if they were to get the same amount of minutes. But I might just pick up Nembhard, actually.
We've just gone through so many cycles with this Warriors rotation. I did a video, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, about like players to drop, and he was just like an easy inclusion there. His roster rate was still way too high, and this was when he was playing like 12 minutes a night and just not giving you anything. And all of a sudden now he's back in the starting lineup and he's playing 27 minutes. So I don't know how long this will last. I mean, he had a couple good games early on. I wouldn't count on the blocks. I know he's coming off a double-double with 4 blocks. That is just not really who he's been. Like every now and then he'll give you a 2 or a 3 block game, but on balance, he's had basically as many games with 1 or 0 blocks, or he's had, I'm getting lost here. So he's had 25 games with 1 or 0 blocks, and he's had 5 games with 2 or more. So I wouldn't read into the 1 4-block game over the weekend and just take that as who he's going to be. So it's a tough call. You're ultimately kind of working on the margins here, but this might just be another, ride the hot hand situation. All right, I'm going to squeeze one more in here. Do I trade Jordan Poole for Isaiah Hartenstein? I think this is a very interesting conceptual trade.
Yeah, like if we're putting the categories aside,
yeah,
I think I would just keep Poole. I think even come March and April, Poole's just gonna be out there doing his thing. Still gonna be firing up, trying to score 50. Yep. He has improved. Like his steal rate is, I think, pretty legit at this point. I don't think it's a mirage. Yep. Hartenstein obviously has been amazing. And if you need those categories, go get him. I'd be fine doing that. I mean, you technically probably lose the trade if you do that, but Chet Holmgren's also going to come back, and that complicates things.
That's the big factor here, and that's really what would push me in favor of Poole. Hartenstein will still be a big part of the rotation. He's not going to be playing that same role that he is now. And like you said, I mean, as bad as the Wizards are, I don't know if anybody's taken the Jordan Poole contract. I'm not really worried about him specifically getting traded. They're not going to be in any danger of not being one of the worst teams in the league with him out there. Yeah, so I wouldn't really worry about him as a shutdown. And I think you said it well, where it's like, if you really need rebounds, if you need a little boost in blocks, then sure. I don't think this is the worst deal to make, but you got to do it with the understanding that in a month and a half from now, you're looking at a center who's going to be coming off the bench for OKC. So it depends how desperate you are, but in general, I think I agree with you that I would hold Jordan Poole. All right, that's going to do it for the Monday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Appreciate all the great questions in the chat. We'll be doing this every Monday throughout the season. No show on Tuesday. I believe no show Wednesday either for the holidays, but we will be back to finally, at long last, a normal schedule starting next week. So we'll have 4 episodes per week. Me and Alex on Mondays, myself and Brandon Kravitz on Tuesdays. We'll have Kieran Sprecher and Mike Barner on Wednesdays, and then Alex, Ken, and Shannon talking waiver wire on Fridays. Enjoy the new year. We'll talk to you soon.